As a first-time mom, I was told you're most likely going to go beyond your due date. As a first-time mom, I was told your water is definitely not going to break. As a first-time mom, I was told that you will be in a very long labor. My labor was miraculous and messy and chaotic and fast and beautiful, all wrapped up into one little bow. Hello you guys, welcome to my channel. Man, it feels so weird sitting behind the camera again. I had some free time. Moses is napping independently, which very rarely happens, and so I might have to pause this video and grab him. But for now, I'm gonna push on through and see how much of this video can get filmed before he wakes from his nap. Also, if you notice like little things flying, I have my setup here like in our windowsill because that's the best lighting we have in this room, and there's little dust things flying, so I'm sorry about that if that's annoying to you. Maybe you didn't notice and now you're gonna notice, and so I'm doubly sorry. My name is Courtney, for those who are new here, and I make videos all about biblical womanhood and motherhood now that I'm a mom, and really just what it looks like to cultivate a village right where you're at. And so thanks for watching today's video. Thanks for being a part of the village, at least for this video. So if you clicked on today's video, you know that it is going to be my birth story. Well, I should say not really my birth story, but the story of the birth of our son. Before I begin today's video about my birth story, I wanted to share about my pregnancy journey. Some background information: I'm a first-time mom. This is mine and my husband's first child. Of course, it was my first pregnancy, so it was my first labor and delivery, and just my whole first time ever going through anything quite like this. As you guys may have seen from my previous videos, finding out I was pregnant was a huge shock to me. We wanted children, and we were actually planning on starting to try for children pretty soon after I found out I was pregnant, and so it was pretty cool that by the time we had decided to start trying, I already was pregnant. I have a few videos about like my reaction to finding out, sharing with others, and things like that, so you can go check those out. I'll have them linked somewhere in this video. Pregnancy, I'm very, very blessed to say, was very simple for me. It was very healthy. There was no complications. Baby and mom were healthy the whole time. That's not to say that there were not challenges during pregnancy. Of course there were, like there is for every woman who is carrying life. But I feel really, truly blessed with the pregnancy that I had and that journey of getting to bear a child in my womb. That's just something really miraculous, and so I praise God that that was the situation for me. But that's enough information. Let's get to the actual birth. As a first-time mom, I was told you're most likely going to go beyond your due date. As a first-time mom, I was told your water is definitely not going to break, at least not until further in labor, or it'll be broken for you. As a first-time mom, I was told that you will be in a very long labor. That's the norm. So I was told all these things: your water wouldn't break, that you would have a very extremely long labor, and that you most likely would go way beyond your due date. Well, that is not the case for me. I don't know if I'm an anomaly or if all these old wives' tales or averages or what's common with women just didn't hit me, but my water broke. I went into labor before my due date, and I had a very, very fast labor. So my labor story actually begins a week before I actually went into labor. Throughout most of my third trimester, I was experiencing a lot of Braxton Hicks contractions. Didn't know if that was real contractions. If it wasn't, I assumed it was Braxton Hicks, but I didn't really know what real contractions felt like. I was experiencing that throughout most of the third trimester. However, exactly 1 week before we welcomed our son, I had really bad prodromal labor. If anyone watches That's the Point podcast, the word prodromal, primordial, every time I say that, it makes me think of that podcast. So if you know, you know. If you don't know, you should know. So listen to it. But I had a lot of prodromal labor, and my contractions were kind of progressing, and so I thought, oh, this is it, like I'm in labor. But nothing happened. Like I did everything I could that day. I was curb walking, I was doing mile circuit, like I was like, okay, I'm contracting a little bit, we're gonna get this baby down and out. But they just went away. I went to bed and woke up the next day and was still pregnant. So then 1 week later, the very next Thursday, I'm sitting at home and It's a little bit before 4 p.m. I've been feeling really crampy, really achy all day long. Nothing felt like contractions, nothing felt like what my prodromal labor felt like earlier in the week. All of a sudden I feel like this intense rolling cramp kind of move from like a little bit up in my body down to the bottom of my uterus. And then I felt a pop and I audibly made a sound. I don't even know what I think I just like yelped a little bit. There was just a lot of pressure. Thankfully, my husband was working from home that day. He came out of the office and was like, hey, are you okay? And I was like, man, I have no idea. Like, I don't know what just happened. I felt a really weird cramp. So I stood up and water comes gushing out. And at the time, I thought that I had just peed myself. I mean, I was 39 weeks, 5 days pregnant. So I was like, okay, I probably did just pee myself. Let's be honest here, people. I did not have on my radar at all that it was my water. I did not think that was gonna happen. I really doubted that I was gonna go into spontaneous labor. I don't know. I just didn't think it was my water. My husband, however, was convinced. And so while I'm still processing if I peed or if that was my water and making my way to the bathroom, he's already like up, grabbing things, loading the car. Like he knew that I was in labor. I go to the bathroom, still unsure what happened. And then I did pee. And so I thought, oh, well, what happened in the living room? That must have just been the first part of emptying my bladder. Like that's what it had to have been. But then more came out and I realized that I wasn't in control of it. And so that's kind of how I knew the difference between if it was my water or if I had just peed on myself, basically. I didn't want to go all the way to the hospital if it wasn't my water, so I wanted to be really, really sure. Once I had more of a convincing feeling that it was my water, I called the clinic just to get a heads up. And they told me, yep, we want you to come, try to get here, within the next hour or two. And I'm like, I'm gonna be in labor all day. Like that's what's gonna happen. I wanna be able to labor at home and just take it slow. And once my contractions builds to that 5 minutes apart range, then I'll go to the hospital. Like I don't wanna be there while I'm just like in slow labor and trying to build up endurance. I called some people to tell them I was in labor. I also called a mom friend of mine who has 6 babies just to ask her what to do. Say, hey, my water broke. What do I do next? She gave me some great advice, just like how to manage the leakage in the car, stop, get some snacks or grab some food through a drive-through, all of which we did not get to do because exactly 10 minutes after my water broke, my contractions began. When my contractions came in, they started at 3 minutes apart. And I thought maybe I was timing them wrong, but they came in really hot, really intense, really quick, not a lot of breaks between. And so now at this point, we're kind of in panic mode. We're just rushing. Thankfully, I had the hospital bag packed. We just had to throw in a few things like toothbrush, phone charger, things like that. I knew you're supposed to get to the hospital when your contractions were 5 minutes apart, and my contractions were 3 minutes apart. From what I had understood, your contractions start really far apart and they build up in intensity and closeness. And through that, you can build endurance to withstand labor and understand the pain and figure out, what movement, what position works for you. How do you cope with your pain? It's really hard to cope with your pain and to learn how to manage it when, boom, you are in active labor. Like it was just really hard to get ahead of the contractions. Now we get everything in the car. By this time it's 4:45 and I'll insert a little video the only video I took this whole entire process of when we were leaving our house.
Hello. My water just broke. Joe's got all our stuff. He's amazing. Going to the hospital. Contractions really came quick. Okay. That's our update.
I should say too that I really wanted to film my labor. I would have loved to have had this memory captured forever. Everything happened very fast and I was not able to capture really anything. I'll insert the very few things that I do have of that whole experience, but that's why it's gonna be just sit down, me sharing the story, because I don't really have anything to show you. So now we're in the car, we're on our way to the hospital, but we make a pit stop at the gas station that's right down the road from us because we were thinking, again, I'm gonna be in labor at least for the next my thought, I really genuinely thought, at least for the next 12 hours. Joe stops to get cash for the valet and snacks for himself. Well, now I'm just sitting in the car in my one position, trying to manage these contractions that are just speeding up and gaining so much intensity. And it really felt like, honestly, how you see it in movies, which is crazy because I know that's not how most labor is, how you see it on TV. But my labor really was water broke, contractions started, pain came, we're in the car, I'm screaming, we're rushing to get to the hospital, and it was just really chaotic like that. How you see in a movie is exactly how it was happening in real life, which I was not at all prepared for. I thought I was gonna have a slow start to labor, it was gonna be simple and relaxing, and that I'd be in the zone, that there would be worship music on and candles lit or my oil diffuser going or whatever. But really it was just me in the car screaming, as now we're making our way through rush hour, mind you, to get to the hospital. Also, while I'm in the car, my contraction app that I'm using to track everything says, head to the hospital, you're in active labor. And I'm like, okay, cool. I already know that. Like, I clearly can tell that I'm in active labor. We're on our way to the hospital already. So I thought that was just like a funny moment in the middle of all this chaos. My contraction app saying, you're in labor, go to the hospital. So we finally get to the hospital, and of course, there's no valet. We stopped for the valet cash just for there to be no valet. We leave our car in the front of the hospital in the emergency drop-off area with the hazards on, and we just get inside. We don't even grab any of our bags. Literally, all of our stuff is in the car. Everything, all of our hospital bags, everything we had ever imagined we'd have with us in the hospital room was still in the car. We just make our way inside as fast as we can barely walk at this point. Joe communicates to the man at the front desk that there's no valet, we can't park the car. He said that happens often and he'll take care of it, don't worry, like our car's okay. We make our way upstairs, and I remember to get into the like behind the security doors for triage, you have to like pick up the phone and a nurse will answer and you tell them why you're trying to get in. And I remember just saying, I'm in labor, and she goes, oh, okay, and like the door buzzed right away. So we quickly scurry in, and then they sit you down, you know, you're doing check-in, and I just remember my contractions were so intense, I literally couldn't even answer a question. I could barely say what my name was. They just rushed me to a room at triage finally, got me, you know, in a gown and hooked up to the monitors just to see what was going on. And I was 4 centimeters dilated. 4 centimeters dilated out of 10, like I'm not even halfway there. So I knew I had a long road ahead of me. After they hook me up and they're kind of assessing everything, the nurse even said to me, wow, your labor is moving really quickly. And I still thought it was gonna be a really, really long time before I actually got to deliver our baby, but I also knew that what I was feeling was really intense and I could just not get ahead of it. The contractions would come and I just would shut down because there was so few rest phases between my contractions. And also up until this whole point, I really had just been sitting in the car in one position, like holding the handle, screaming. Finally, I got into a delivery room and I had requested one with a bathtub. I really wanted to experience water birth as much as I could. And by the time I got into the tub, 1, my labor was way too intense to actually relax in the bathtub, and 2, I had really, really terrible back labor. My back labor was so intense that all I could do was be on all fours. That was the only position that felt neutral enough. And when you're on all fours in a bathtub, there's a lot of splashing happening. So I did not enjoy it. But I will say that I definitely want to experience this if I'm able to with any other future births I may have, because I do think it would have really helped. I remember just even being in there with all of our little like at the hospital, they gave me little oil stickers. They would just slap down wherever my face was and I could breathe in. That was really relaxing to smell that in this big tub, even though it was chaotic. So I do think it's something that I would enjoy in the future. So by this point, I'm just really trying to manage as they come. And I watched a lot of birth preparation videos from the Built to Birth channel. I'll link the main one I watched down below. What she talks about in those videos is to breathe your baby out and how breath is so important when you're in labor. That was really the one thing I think that really got me through delivery, and and through my labor process was just breathing. Basically, all I knew I could do was just breathe. And so I tried to control my breath as much as possible. The only thing I had in the room was the nurses, my husband, myself, the Lord, and whatever tools I had at the hospital, like the yoga ball and the peanut ball, and those little oil strip sticker things they kept giving me, which was amazing. I remember at one point I was just like, my face was kind of by the rails of the bed, and a nurse just like smacked one of those lavender sticker oil things right in front of my face, and it was heavenly. But I didn't have any of my tools. I didn't have my labor combs I wanted to try. I didn't have, my snacks or my honey sticks. I didn't have my speaker to even have worship music on. My nurses really were incredible, like from the little oil stickers I was talking about to even the fact that to keep me hydrated, they just kept giving me apple juice. Like I don't even remember asking for it. Literally every couple of minutes someone was sticking a straw in my mouth and it was either apple juice or water, and I was grateful. It just was all happening really quickly, and my goal was to have a natural labor, and so it was hard to manage the pain without any tools other than just my breath support. I just focused on how I was breathing and felt in control of my breathing, and it helped me overcome my contractions. But that doesn't mean that it was easy. I don't say I had a natural labor to brag or to say that that's the right way. It was just the goal that I had set for myself, but it doesn't mean that I didn't want to give up on that goal. I remember looking at the clock, 8 p.m. And now at this point I'd been in labor for 4 hours. I'd only been checked that one time when I first got to the hospital, so I only knew that I was 4 centimeters dilated and I had been in labor for 4 hours. I remember talking to the nurse about getting an epidural. I was serious. I was like, I don't know how women do this naturally. I, for myself in that moment, really just wanted to give up. I knew that was going to be hard to give up on my desire to have a natural labor, but I also, on the other hand, was like, well, I don't even know if I could sit still for an epidural at this point, because earlier when I got into the hospital, before they saw my birth plan, they tried to insert an IV, but they couldn't because I couldn't sit still. So I was like wrestling with this, like I really want to have a natural labor, but I'm in a lot of pain, but also I don't know if I want to give up on my goal or if I could even get an epidural at this point, so what do I do? And the nurse gave me time to think about it. She stepped out of the room for a moment, and I remember Joe was so supportive of whatever I needed. He was like, you need to do what you need to do. Like, you're no less of a superhero, you're no less of a mom. It's no less of a labor if you decide to have an epidural or do it naturally. And so hear that from me. If you're watching this video, whatever way you decide to do it is an okay way to do it. Getting the baby out healthy and getting mom healthy is the goal. I just took a deep breath, and I didn't really even pray, to be honest. I just kind of closed my eyes and thought of the Lord in a smallest, like micro millisecond of a moment. And the Lord said to me, "You're closer than you think." Now, I remember being like, cool, what does that mean? And I remember thinking, you know what? I feel like I have to be 8 centimeters dilated. I don't know why I was convinced, but I was like, I have to be, because I want to give up. And that usually means you're in transition. When the nurse came back in, I asked if she would check me. I was like, can you just check and see how dilated I am? In my head, I had already kind of bargained. If I'm less than 6, I'll get the epidural. But if I'm more than 6, I'm over halfway and I'll just keep going. Well, turns out I was 10 centimeters. The Lord was exactly right. I was way closer than I thought. The nurse checked me. She said, oh my goodness, you're ready to go. But then she cautioned me, do not push, which I thought was funny because I'm like, well, my body's there. And I remember feeling the urge to push and communicate that to my nurse. And she told me, I know you feel like you have to push. I know you want to push, but try your best to hold off. We need to get the doctor in here. And I was like, okay, cool. And then my body just started naturally pushing him out. Like, I was not doing it. I remember trying to fight the pushes, but my body was just naturally trying to eject him. Like, they were like, okay, it's your eviction notice, baby, let's get out of here. We waited for the doctor for 30 minutes, and I remember it was probably one of the more scarier parts of labor because I didn't want to, obviously I wanted to meet my baby, but I wanted to do it in a way that was safe. And also, I really wanted to have a doctor there, and so, because it was just my husband and the nurse at that point. And I remember just trying with all my might to try to go against what my body was doing, but I couldn't. My body just was bringing baby lower and lower and lower. Speaking of baby, I think I just heard him. Oh my goodness, that mom anxiety. I heard him sneezing and I sounded like he was choking and I sprinted there and knocked my setup down. So sorry about that. Oh, my heart's racing. He's still asleep though. He's still sleeping like a perfect little angel. Finally, the doctor came in and began pushing, and since I didn't have an epidural, I could push in whatever position I wanted. So that was fun to get to try pushing in different ways. You know, everything was so intense, and Joe was amazing. He was a rock star. Poor man, like everything was going so quickly and he just was thrown right into it, but he was in there with me doing all the double hip squeezes. He even had the nurses show him different ways to do them. He was trying to manage my birth plan without having it in front of him because it was still in the car. And finally, once my parents came, my mom came in the room and gave him a little bit of a break so he could go grab some stuff from the car. They were able to move the car for us to the parking garage, and Joe finally was able to get the birth plan in front of him and actually answer some of the nurses' questions. But also, we had my oil diffuser. That was the one thing I requested of all of the things was, can I have my oil diffuser, please? So while I'm pushing, I just remember saying to myself, you're one push closer to meeting your son. You're one push closer to meeting your son. Partway through pushing, obviously ring of fire, you know what's happening during that time. The baby's head is about to come out, and the doctor had me feel his head as it came out, and I think that was a really cool experience. And I remember the first thing I felt was his full head of hair, and I was so surprised because I did not think he was gonna have such thick hair when he was born, but he had a lot of hair. He still has a lot of hair. He's balding a little bit now, but he does have a lot of hair still. But I remember that being like the first moment with him as he's entering the world, was feeling his hair. After a little bit longer, I was pushing. The doctor said to me, okay, Courtney, this is gonna be really hard, but while you push, I want you to catch your baby. Reach down and catch your baby. This is something I haven't really shared with a lot of people before my labor, but I heard of a mom and know of a mom who caught her baby, and I always thought that was the coolest thing I ever heard. I thought, how amazing is it to be so hands-on in your birth? And that's really what I wanted. I wanted to have a birth that was natural, that the Lord was all in it and through it. I wanted to have an experience that was so positive, and I'm so grateful that I was able to have that experience. And something that I've been praying over was to have like this birth that I had desired to have. Something that I never really brought up in prayer with the Lord was this desire to catch a baby. I wanted to one day be able to catch one of my babies, but I didn't think, I don't know, I just didn't think to pray about that specific detail. I prayed over lots of very specific, nuanced things that I desired to have in my delivery and birth story, but I literally, I'm not kidding, I never came to the Lord and said, Lord, can I please catch one of my babies? It was just something that was locked deep in my heart. If that doesn't show you how much God cares about you and loves to delight you and surprise you and meet you in these really miraculous, tiny ways, I don't know what will, because that is something I'm going to cherish forever, that the Lord saw this desire in my heart and gave it to me, and he didn't need to, because this birth, while painful and messy, man, birth is very messy, I'll just say that. Quick and chaotic, and there was a lot of things that did not go how I had anticipated. The Lord gave me this really sweet detail in the story, and I am forever grateful. Our son Moses, David, was born at 9:26 p.m. on the leap year, which we think is just so special and so cool. I remember in that last push, just putting my hands down there and grabbing my baby and pulling him up to me and meeting my son for the first time and getting to, oh gosh, I'm getting emotional now, but getting to see his face and his beautiful brown eyes, and like I said, his head of hair, a full head of hair, like long hair too, and his back was really hairy, and it was just so cute and sweet, and he's so perfect. And in that moment, you just, everything is still, and you just know that the Lord is good and that this is a gift from God. You just know in that moment. I didn't think I was gonna get emotional about this, but it's just a pure moment. And it's like you go through all this pain, and then you get through the end of it and you have this sweet, innocent, pure little baby that you get to take care of forever, and it just makes all the pain worth it. I actually had this on my labor scripture that I never even got out of my bag because it was in the car. I had lots of little like pieces of paper with different scriptures and like biblical concepts written on them, but there was one that I wrote really big. It had said, "Behold the life born out of pain." Now, being a mother and giving birth, I can tell you that is a vulnerable moment and you're very exposed and it's very messy, and just the reality of that, thinking about that before I had our son, the life born out of pain, but then also thinking about Jesus on the cross and how he was raised to life out of that pain, thinking about how Jesus gives us new life that was born out of his pain. That was just the phrase that I had with me, and meeting my son in that moment, I can tell you that that is 100% true. You go through the pains of childbirth to behold the life that's born from it, and it is sweet. So sweet. Being in the hospital and getting to just know our son felt like such a sweet little blessing, and honestly a little like a holy couple of days as we were there. Yeah, we felt truly loved and blessed and supported at our hospital by our staff, by our family, and by our friends. It was just a really positive experience. So for any of the mamas out there, or future mamas, or hopeful mamas, or soon-to-be mamas, you were made to do this. God is with you. God is shepherding you through the crazy, crazy awesomeness of childbirth, but I also want there to be absolute certainty that however your baby comes, that it is a gift from God that you have that baby. It is a miracle that you were able to carry that life. It is a miracle that you have that child. It is a miracle that you made it out of birth, and now you get to parent and raise a disciple for Jesus. That is a flat out work of God. I feel so grateful that God blessed me to have a labor that I had prayed for, that I had dreamed of, and I feel so blessed and honored that I get to raise this little boy and that I get to be his mom. Right after I delivered him, I had the shakes. Like, I could not stop shaking, and I like for many hours, like well into the next day. And I remember even talking, initially I brought it up and they said, "Oh, that's normal, you know, it's just your adrenaline." Eventually, as time had passed, it only happened when I would stand up and go to the bathroom at the hospital. And I remember bringing it up to my nurse, and she also was like, "Oh, that's okay, that's pretty normal." But that caught me off guard. Because I declined that fundal massage, they did have to do some extra checks on me to make sure that I wasn't hemorrhaging, and praise God, that didn't happen. I didn't have any complications. So then when we were leaving the hospital, it did feel like a bit of a scary moment. You know, it felt like we kind of made a little bit of a home at the hospital, and it felt safe because there was nurses and doctors there who could tell you if it was normal and if what you were doing was right. And so we actually had some friends come and help us pack up all of our stuff and help us bring it to our car. Put Moses in his car seat and get him in the car, and he's screaming, and my hormones, I'm just sobbing and weeping the whole time. You know, we get him home finally, which felt like the longest car ride ever. We live in a pretty quiet neighborhood. Our neighbors have never done this before, but we come home and our neighbors are having a day party. It was like 2 p.m. They're just having like legit some early St. Patrick's Day party. Everyone was wearing green and like leprechaun hats, and they're just having a rager in their backyard, and like really heavy like rap music is playing, and it's loud, and there's alcohol everywhere. Where we park is kind of right next to where their backyard starts. I'm all sore and walking all achy, and we're bringing this sweet 2-day-old, not even baby, into our house, and that was a funny memory. That's it. That's my birth story. I praise God that that's my story. So grateful that our little Moses is here. I would show him to you if he was awake, but I'm gonna let him sleep. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Please let me know what you thought about it below. Also, I would love to hear your either dream birth or what your experience was like. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to chat about that below. Got some other things about motherhood coming up. Thank you guys. Be blessed. Have a great day. Till next time. Mama outie. Why did I say that?